What if the patterns that shape your fears, dreams, desires, and even your relationships were not just personal, but shared by every human who ever lived? Beneath the surface of our thoughts and personalities lies a vast, ancient realm, a hidden psychological landscape that binds us all together. Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious, a mysterious force driving our behaviors, emotions, and the stories we tell ourselves. In this journey, we're not just exploring the mind, we're decoding the blueprint of the human soul. Get ready to discover how archetypes, the shadow self, and the path to inner wholeness aren't abstract theories but living truths shaping every part of your life. This is not just psychology, it's a map of what it means to be human. Have you ever felt like there's more to you than what you see on the surface? Like there's a hidden part of your mind guiding your thoughts, dreams, and fears without you even realizing it? That's exactly what Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists in history, spent his life exploring. He believed that human behavior is shaped not just by personal experiences, but by something far older, deeper, and shared by all people. A mysterious realm he called the collective unconscious. In this video, we're about to take a journey through Jung's map of the human experience. But this isn't just academic theory. Jung's ideas offer tools for understanding why we feel lost, why we repeat certain patterns, and how we can reconnect with a more authentic version of ourselves. His theories don't just explain behavior, they invite us to explore our own minds like an uncharted landscape, filled with symbols, myths, and insights waiting to be discovered. Jung didn't just build on Freud's work, he broke away from it. Where Freud saw the unconscious as a storage room for repressed desires, Jung saw it as a vast and mysterious dimension filled with wisdom, inherited memories, and universal symbols that connect us to every human who has ever lived. According to Jung, our minds are like islands, but beneath the surface they're all connected to the same ocean. Why does this matter? Because we often feel isolated or misunderstood. We go through life reacting to things without fully understanding why. We carry emotional wounds, live behind masks, and struggle with inner conflicts. Jung believed that much of this confusion comes from being disconnected from the deeper parts of ourselves. He believed that healing begins when we shine a light on the unconscious, when we turn inward instead of just looking outside ourselves for answers. So, what will we uncover on this journey? We'll look at the different layers of the mind, the conscious, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. We'll meet the powerful archetypes that live within us, like the shadow, the persona, and the self. We'll explore the meaning of dreams and symbols, and we'll see how the process of individuation, the path to becoming whole, can transform the way we live. But before we dive into those ideas, let's pause for a moment to reflect on something important. Jung didn't offer quick fixes or surface-level advice. He asked us to look at the parts of ourselves we often ignore. He invited us to see our lives as a mythic journey, where every fear, every relationship, and every dream is a message from the unconscious, calling us to grow. This might sound abstract at first, but Jung's work becomes incredibly personal once you start to apply it. When you notice how you act differently around certain people, you're seeing the persona at work. When you recognize parts of yourself that you've pushed away or denied, you're catching a glimpse of your shadow. When you find yourself drawn to stories, symbols, or dreams that feel strangely familiar, that's the collective unconscious speaking. In a world that often encourages us to look outward, toward success, status, or approval, Jung's theories turn us inward. They remind us that the greatest adventure is not out there in the world, but inside ourselves. It's about learning who we really are beneath all the roles we play. It's about reconnecting with the deeper forces that shape our lives without our awareness. So if you've ever felt like you're searching for something you can't quite name, If you've sensed that your dreams might have meaning, or that your struggles might be leading you somewhere, then you're in the right place. Carl Jung's map of the psyche might not give you all the answers, but it will guide you to the questions that matter most. And now, with that in mind, let's begin our exploration of the human psyche by understanding how Jung divided the mind into three powerful realms: the conscious, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. Carl Jung believed that to truly understand human behavior, we have to look beneath the surface of our everyday thoughts. He introduced a detailed model of the psyche, a map of the human mind, that explains why we feel, think, and act the way we do. Jung divided the psyche into three major parts: the conscious mind, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. Each of these layers holds a unique role in shaping who we are, often without us even realizing it. Let's begin with the conscious mind. This is the part of the psyche we are most familiar with. It's the awareness we carry throughout the day, our thoughts, decisions, feelings, and sense of identity. It's the voice in our head that says, "I am me." But Jung made it clear that this conscious part is just a tiny piece of a much larger picture. It's like the tip of an iceberg floating above the surface, while the majority of the mind lies hidden below. Beneath the conscious is the personal unconscious. This part of the psyche contains memories, experiences, and feelings that once were conscious but have been forgotten, repressed, or ignored. These can include painful experiences, forgotten childhood memories, or even skills we haven't used in a long time. Some of this material remains buried because it's too painful to face. For example, if someone was deeply hurt in a past relationship, they may unconsciously avoid intimacy in future relationships, not realizing the fear is rooted in their personal unconscious. But Jung didn't stop there. His most groundbreaking idea was the concept of the collective unconscious, a deeper layer of the mind that doesn't come from personal experience, but is shared by all human beings. He believed that every person is born with this inherited psychological structure, filled with universal patterns, instincts, and symbols that have developed over thousands of years of human evolution. These inherited elements are not memories of specific events, but rather basic ways of experiencing the world that all humans share. Imagine the collective unconscious as a vast underground library filled with myth, wisdom, and symbolic images that all humans carry, whether we're aware of it or not. This is where archetypes live, universal symbols like the hero, the mother, the wise old man, and the shadow. These archetypes influence our thoughts, dreams, and behaviors. For instance, we might be drawn to certain characters in movies or stories not because we've met them in real life, but because they awaken something ancient within us. The collective unconscious helps explain why people from different cultures who have never met create similar myths and symbols. It's why dreams, religious symbols, and even fairy tales across the world often share the same themes. These aren't just coincidences. Jung believed they are expressions of shared inner experiences rooted in the collective unconscious. Understanding the structure of the psyche helps explain why we sometimes feel pulled in different directions. The conscious mind might want to do one thing, but the unconscious pulls us another way. For example, someone might consciously want to succeed in their career, but their personal unconscious might carry self-doubt from a past failure quietly sabotaging their efforts. Or someone might feel an unexplained fear or attraction, not realizing it's coming from an archetype that has been activated deep within the collective unconscious. Jung's model shows us that we are more than what we think we are. We are shaped not only by what we remember, but also by what we forget, what we inherit, and what we share with every other human being. This understanding opens the door to deep self-awareness. It encourages us to explore not just our history, but our inner world, to question what lies beneath our habits, beliefs, and emotional reactions. So when we feel stuck, lost, or confused, Jung would urge us not to just look at the surface, but to explore the layers of the psyche. He believed that the path to healing and wholeness lies in understanding all three levels of the mind. Only when we acknowledge the hidden forces within us, personal and collective, can we begin to make conscious choices and live with greater awareness. This layered view of the mind sets the stage for one of Jung's most important ideas, the archetypes. In the next part, we'll explore what these ancient patterns are, how they show up in our lives, and how they can help us better understand ourselves and others. Carl Jung introduced the concept of archetypes to explain the universal symbols and patterns that live deep within the human psyche. According to him, these archetypes are not learned or invented by individuals, but are inherited patterns that belong to the collective unconscious. They are like blueprints of human experience, ancient templates that shape the way we perceive the world, form relationships, and make sense of our lives. Even if we are unaware of them, they are constantly influencing our behavior, emotions, dreams, and even the stories we are drawn to. Archetypes are not fixed personalities or characters. Instead, they are more like forces or tendencies, primordial images that show up in myths, religions, fairy tales, and even modern films and books. For example, the idea of a hero going on a dangerous quest, or the wise old man offering advice, appears in cultures across the globe. Jung believed these patterns are so universal because they come from the same deep structure of the human mind, the collective unconscious. One of the most important archetypes is the self. It represents the center of the psyche and the goal of personal development, becoming a whole, balanced, and fully integrated person. The self is not the same as the ego, which is the conscious sense of identity. Instead, it's the deeper, true essence of who we are, a unity of all parts of the personality, both conscious and unconscious. Another essential archetype is the persona. This is the mask we wear in public, the version of ourselves we present to fit into society, family, or work roles. While the persona helps us function in social situations, it can become a problem if we over-identify with it. For instance, someone might always act confident and successful on the outside while hiding deep insecurity inside. If we only live through the persona, we risk losing touch with our authentic self. Opposite to the persona lies the shadow. This archetype contains the parts of ourselves we deny, repress, or dislike. It holds the traits we don't want to acknowledge, like anger, envy, weakness, or shame, but also hidden talents and instincts. When we refuse to face the shadow, it doesn't disappear. Instead, it influences our behavior from the background, often causing projection. We may dislike or judge others for traits we actually carry within ourselves. Jung emphasized the importance of confronting the shadow as part of psychological growth. By acknowledging and integrating these hidden aspects, we gain a more honest and complete understanding of ourselves. This is not easy, but it is essential for becoming whole. The anima and animus are two other major archetypes. The anima is the feminine energy within the male psyche, and the animus is the masculine energy within the female psyche. These archetypes represent our inner opposite and influence how we relate to the other gender and to our own emotional and rational sides. Jung believed that integrating the anima or animus helps us achieve inner balance and deeper relationships. There are many more archetypes such as the hero, the mother, the trickster, and the child. These figures show up in dreams, art, religion, and daily life. For example, someone going through a major life change might be living out the hero's journey, leaving the familiar, facing challenges, and returning transformed. Or someone might be caught in the role of the caregiver, always helping others but neglecting their own needs. which may point to the mother archetype at play. Understanding archetypes helps us recognize patterns in our lives that might otherwise remain unconscious. When we notice ourselves always falling into the same kinds of relationships, making similar choices, or reacting in repeated ways, we might be acting out an archetype without realizing it. Jung believed that by becoming aware of these patterns, we can step back, reflect, and choose new paths. In essence, archetypes offer a powerful lens to explore the human experience. They don't tell us exactly what to do, but they give us insight into the inner dramas playing out in our lives. They help us see that we are not alone in our struggles, that the patterns we live are ancient and deeply human. Recognizing and working with archetypes is a key step in Jung's vision of psychological growth. In the next section, we will dive deeper into one of the most powerful and personal archetypes, the shadow. We'll explore how it hides in our everyday life and how facing it can lead to profound transformation. One of Carl Jung's most powerful and challenging ideas is the concept of the shadow. The shadow is the part of the unconscious mind that holds everything we reject, deny, or fear about ourselves. These are the traits, desires, and impulses we don't want to admit we have. Things like jealousy, anger, selfishness, laziness, or even vulnerability and sensitivity. But the shadow isn't just negative. It can also contain positive qualities we've buried because they weren't accepted by our family, culture, or society. Jung believed that every person carries a shadow. It forms early in life when we begin to learn what is acceptable and unacceptable. For example, a child who is told that being loud or assertive is bad may learn to suppress those traits. Over time, those rejected parts sink into the unconscious. They don't disappear, they just hide. And from the shadows, they continue to influence how we behave, often in surprising and even harmful ways. One of the most common ways the shadow shows itself is through projection. This happens when we see in others what we refuse to see in ourselves. We might criticize someone for being arrogant, controlling, or emotional, when in truth, we carry those same qualities deep down. Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." In other words, our judgments often point directly to our own shadow. The shadow doesn't just live in individuals, it exists in groups, cultures, and societies as well. Entire nations or communities can reject certain traits and project them onto others, leading to conflict, discrimination, and division. By understanding the shadow, we can start to see these dynamics more clearly and respond with compassion rather than blame. But the shadow isn't something to be feared or hated. Jung believed that facing the shadow is one of the most important steps in personal growth. He called this process shadow work. It involves becoming aware of our hidden parts, accepting them, and integrating them into our conscious self. This doesn't mean acting out negative traits, but recognizing their presence and understanding their purpose. For example, anger isn't always bad. It can be a sign that a boundary has been crossed. Assertiveness, often rejected as too aggressive, can be a healthy way to stand up for yourself. Even jealousy can reveal what we truly value. By listening to these emotions instead of ignoring or denying them, we begin to build a more honest relationship with ourselves. The shadow also contains tremendous energy and creativity. When we repress our true feelings or desires, we lose access to this energy. But when we integrate the shadow, we often discover hidden talents, deeper confidence, and a renewed sense of purpose. Many artists, writers, and creators tap into their shadow for inspiration, expressing what others are afraid to say. Shadow work isn't easy. It requires courage, humility, and patience. It might involve looking back at painful memories, confronting uncomfortable truths, or admitting flaws we've tried to hide, but it's also deeply rewarding. The more we face the shadow, the less power it has over us. We become less reactive, more balanced, and more in control of our lives. Jung saw the shadow not as an enemy, but as a guide. He believed that wholeness comes not from being perfect, but from embracing all parts of ourselves, the light and the dark. Only then can we become truly authentic and free. In daily life, shadow work can take many forms: journaling honestly, paying attention to strong emotional reactions, exploring dreams, or seeking therapy. It's about asking yourself, what am I avoiding? What do I dislike in others that might be in me? What have I buried that wants to be seen? As we begin to meet our shadow, we start to understand ourselves on a much deeper level. We move from living unconsciously to living with awareness. We begin to see our inner conflicts not as problems, but as invitations to grow. And that journey of facing and integrating the shadow is a key part of what Jung called individuation. In the next section, we'll explore this powerful process and how it can lead us to become the truest version of ourselves. At the heart of Carl Jung's psychology is the concept of individuation, a process of becoming whole, of discovering who we truly are beneath all the layers we've inherited from family, society, and personal history. Individuation isn't about becoming perfect or fitting a fixed idea of success. It's about integrating all parts of the self, conscious and unconscious, light and dark, masculine and feminine, into a balanced and authentic whole. Jung believed that every person has an inner drive toward individuation, even if we aren't aware of it. This drive shows up in moments of crisis, deep reflection, or life transitions, times when our old identity no longer fits and something new wants to emerge. Rather than resisting these moments, Jung encouraged us to see them as invitations to grow into our fuller selves. The process of individuation begins with the ego, our conscious identity. This is the part of us that says, I am this person, I do this job, I have these beliefs. While the ego is necessary to navigate daily life, it often thinks it's the whole story. But Jung emphasized that the ego is just a small part of a much larger psyche. If we over-identify with the ego and ignore what lies beneath, we live only on the surface. As we begin to explore the unconscious, through dreams, art, therapy, or deep introspection, we start to encounter the shadow. As we discussed earlier, this is the part of the psyche that holds the traits and emotions we've rejected or ignored. Facing the shadow is one of the first major steps of individuation. It can be uncomfortable, even painful, but it also opens the door to greater honesty and inner strength. Next, we encounter the anima or animus, the inner opposite. For a man, the anima represents his inner feminine energy, emotions, sensitivity, creativity, intuition. For a woman, the animus represents her inner masculine qualities, logic, courage, independence, and structure. Integrating these inner opposites helps us develop balance. A man becomes more emotionally aware. A woman becomes more assertive and clear. Both become more whole. But individuation isn't just about looking inward. It also requires confronting the persona, the mask we wear to fit into society. While the persona helps us function, it often becomes too rigid. We might confuse it with our true self, leading to feelings of emptiness or anxiety. Individuation involves peeling back this mask and asking, who am I really beneath the roles I play? Through all of this, facing the shadow, balancing the anima, animus, dissolving the persona, we begin to approach the core of the psyche, the self. The self, in Jung's view, is the center and totality of who we are. It is not just the good or ideal version of us. It includes everything. The self is the guiding force behind individuation, pulling us toward integration, purpose, and inner harmony. This journey is not linear. It's a spiral with many layers. We may revisit the shadow again and again. We may struggle with our persona in different roles: parent, partner, worker. Each step brings us closer to authenticity. And it's not about separating from the world, but about returning to it with a deeper sense of self. As we individuate, we become more compassionate, grounded, and capable of making meaningful choices. Individuation also involves listening to the unconscious. Jung saw dreams as the voice of the unconscious, offering guidance and insight. A dream might bring up an image of water, symbolizing emotion, or a stranger, symbolizing a hidden part of ourselves. By working with these symbols, we begin to understand what the psyche is trying to tell us. Importantly, individuation is a lifelong process. There is no final arrival. Instead, it's a deepening, a continual unfolding of who we are. And while the path is deeply personal, it connects us more deeply with others. As we become more whole, we relate more honestly, love more freely, and contribute more authentically to the world. In a time where people often chase external validation, likes, success, approval, Jung reminds us to turn inward. True peace, he believed, comes from alignment between the inner and outer world. Individuation is not about escaping life, but about fully engaging with it from a place of self-awareness and depth. In our final section, we'll explore how the collective unconscious, this shared psychic inheritance of all humanity, links us not only to ourselves, but to every other human being. We'll see how ancient symbols, myths, and dreams continue to shape us, and how reconnecting with this deeper layer can offer profound insight, healing, and meaning. Carl Jung's concept of the collective unconscious is one of his most profound and far-reaching contributions to psychology. While the personal unconscious holds our individual memories, experiences, and repressed feelings, the collective unconscious goes much deeper. It is the shared layer of the human psyche that connects every individual to the whole of humanity. It contains ancient wisdom, patterns, and symbols that have been passed down not through culture or education, but through our very biology as part of the human experience. Jung described the collective unconscious as a vast psychic inheritance, made up of what he called archetypes, universal themes and images that show up across cultures, religions, and time periods. Whether we are born in Asia, Africa, Europe, or the Americas, we all carry these same basic psychological structures. That's why the same kinds of stories, myths, and symbols appear in different cultures, even if those cultures never interacted. Take, for example, the hero's journey. In ancient Greek myths, African folktales, Native American legends, and modern superhero films, we see the same basic story. A hero leaves home, faces trials, receives help from a wise guide, and returns transformed. This recurring pattern speaks to a deep truth within the human soul: the need to grow, face the unknown, and come back stronger. Jung believed these stories survive and resonate not because they entertain us, but because they reflect the inner process of our own psychological growth. Another example is the image of the Great Mother, the nurturing, protective, yet sometimes terrifying figure. She shows up in symbols of the earth, the moon, the ocean, or goddesses like Isis, Kali, or Mary. These symbols tap into something deep and universal: the experience of care, creation, and the mystery of life and death. The same applies to the wise old man, the trickster, the shadow, and many other archetypes. They live in the collective unconscious, and they show up again and again in stories, dreams, and spiritual traditions. The collective unconscious also reveals itself in dreams. Jung believed that when we dream, we don't just process our personal life. We sometimes tap into the collective mind of humanity. That's why people often dream of ancient symbols like snakes, temples, or dragons, even if they've never encountered them in real life. These dream images are not random. They are messages from the deeper self, often showing us something we need to see or learn. By understanding these symbols, we gain insight into our deeper needs and hidden truths. Jung also believed that the collective unconscious plays a major role in religion and spirituality. Sacred texts, rituals, and symbols are not just cultural inventions. They are expressions of universal psychic realities. When people connect with religious or mythological stories, they are not just believing in something. They are experiencing deep archetypal truths. This is why symbols like the cross, the mandala, or the serpent hold such enduring power. They activate something timeless within us. In modern life, many of us feel disconnected from this deeper layer. We are caught up in technology, speed, and surface-level interactions. But Jung believed that healing and meaning come from reconnecting with the collective unconscious through myth, art, meditation, nature, and introspection. When we engage with symbols and stories that have stood the test of time, we tap into something far greater than ourselves. We begin to understand that our struggles, hopes, and dreams are not just personal, they are deeply human. This connection can also foster greater empathy. When we realize that all people carry the same fundamental patterns, we begin to see ourselves in others. We understand that the fear in someone else's eyes or the joy in their heart is not so different from our own. The collective unconscious reminds us that we are not isolated beings. We are part of a vast, ancient web of life and meaning. In essence, Jung's vision of the collective unconscious invites us to see life not as random chaos, but as a meaningful journey shaped by forces deeper than we can see. It encourages us to respect the wisdom of dreams, honor the power of symbols, and explore the ancient truths that live within our own hearts. Through this understanding, we begin to live more consciously, not just as individuals, but as part of a shared human story. And in doing so, we unlock the deeper dimensions of who we are and what it truly means to be alive.